what we were going to do was we're actually going to make some racks for solo. And I've already made a few. And my thinking is what might evolve out of this is sort of a template, starting template that we can have a bunch of settings already in. That way we merely have to jump into that template, change a couple of things here and there, and end up with another rack that does another set of things without having to reinvent the wheel every time. But I've made a pretty fancy rack. I'm taking advantage of the input and output MIDI ports. I'm taking advantage of the media player. I recorded a mod wheel sweep that I play back from the rack using a binding, so I can start the media player in that rack from a button. Well, let's just sort of jump in and we'll take a look at this thing, what all I've created here. Okay, so I've created this thing I'm calling Racks Template. And you see, we'll jump right in. Under Rack MIDI ports, I created a bunch of ports. I made an instant splitter, yes, for splitting keyboards. And we're going to modify that so it's reverse of the way it's set up now so that it works for organs. I got one that just does CC27 because my Behringer pedal does that. CC1, mod wheel, just CC7. And the idea here is I just send it the controller and it automatically filters out CC7 so I can then redirect that somewhere. Rack MIDI in and MIDI out, and some demo results 1, 2, 3, 4. I've created a result 1 from the media player. And splits using the keyboard splitter, that's the filter. And normally that splits the lower to channel 1 and the upper to channel 2. But I made it so that the upper can also be sent to channel 1 as well. It just comes out of its own output so that you can send it to another synth, because some VSTs don't like getting it on anything but channel 1. So that's why I made that. And then the innards are pretty simple. It's just taking those ports and sending them somewhere. And you'll see all my complex filters over here by the little green light. What? They're missing. What the heck? All my filters are gone. Well, that's the elegance of this whole thing, is that I didn't filter here in the rack in this section. I filtered instead right there at the input. So let's go ahead and go back here and go back to that screen, MIDI ports. And now you'll see just CC27 has MIDI filters right there. Okay, so I'm applying my MIDI filters right there at the input. So it doesn't even have to be treated in the rack. It can be done right at the named thing. So that way I can create a bunch of named filters that are accessible right from the inputs up here. And send anything I want to that instant splitter, and they're going to become outputs. Or I can send it right to just this and already filter this, already filter that, and send it right from here. So again, main keyboard. Instead of going to MIDI in, I can go to just 27 or just 1 or just 7. And now, whatever's coming through here, of course, I have my 27 is Behringer pedal board. Now I should be seeing some signal going to the Racks template. When I get down here and go to my, you see that it's getting something here. And go inside, and I see that just 27 is passing, and it's passing to rack result 4, which I could just say CC27. Okay? Now, furthermore, I can take 27, and instead of sending it out right away to send to something, now I can use this input, and instead of sending it out, this custom output, I can send it somewhere else in this rack and make it manipulate something else. So I've instantly created a source for that pedal just by sending my controller to that rack. through that input that's named. So I know exactly what's happening right at the top of the screen, that I am sending my 27, and no matter how many other controllers, how many CCs, sliders and buttons and everything else that controller's got, this is specifically sending that. And it's doing all its filtration right at the source, right there at the MIDI port. All right. Now for those are easy ideas. Just mod wheel, of course. All it is saying allow controller 1 and turn off everything else, and don't do notes. I'm just interested in my controller, so I don't even pass notes. Okay. So all it is a very strict filter. It just lets one thing through. Some of the others are a little more complex. On result 1, of course, it doesn't have a filter. It's just a place to send stuff, and you can change the name just by going in here and changing its name when you need to. The splitter is kind of interesting because it uses the filter. It uses 2 filters actually. It has the split keyboard filter that splits lower channel and upper channel. And then what I'm doing is I'm making it so that this is the output just of channel 1. So although the splitter is splitting it here and sending both channels, I'm ignoring one of them. I really just want to grab that lower and use it as a mapper that way. And then select channel 1 for this output, because I just want it, this says the name of it is lower. So I just want the lower. And in this one I just want the upper. So it's the same story. I split it and I just send the 2 using select channel 2 so that only channel 2 is passed. And here of course I can be changing my assignments also so that they're not unison. And that I thought we'd do that with the inverse of this idea. Now one thing you can't do easily, you can't make duplicates of these. So we'll just go ahead and add another output. And we'll make a reverse organ lower. Now, who wants the left hand to be the upper register and the right hand to be the lower register? Not me. I want the left hand to be the bottom register and the right hand to be the upper on my organs. If I'm splitting a keyboard, you get what I'm saying? If I now, wait a minute, I'm getting some dissension. For me, the lower register is my left hand. It's always my left hand. I'm always playing the upper register with my right hand. All the time.
There are times.
There's times when you switch, but that's when you do this.
Right.
So I thought the way that the initial keyboard split was set up was kind of messed up for people who do the left hand. So so I'll call it lefty lowy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll go ahead and we'll add the keyboard split. And again, we'll send it. So we want the lower. Right now is channel 1, but the upper on most organ VSTs, you have to send the upper channel 1, and then it automatically creates channel 2, lower to be channel 2, to be the next consecutive channel.
Yeah.
So we could simply change it right here and make this B2 and this B1, correct? And not have to do any other fancy business. But that's all I sort of wanted to show. And I wanted to have the cool name. And mind you, we haven't done anything. We haven't even opened our Racks template here. We're doing all this stuff right there in the MIDI ports. Okay, let's look at the other thing, media player idea. was I recorded a track and put it in the media player, mod wheel up and down. And so let's go ahead and, I got this boring sound, but when I play this, it does that. So that was just mod wheel up. I got mod wheel up, down, and I did bind it. Isn't that great? And it loops. See, I got it on loop a couple of times. Or I could go down, which the idea being, okay, and I did assign a button to start the player. Let's see if it's going to work. Great, huh? So that could be a pedal. But it's mostly, oh, and also I did bind by right-clicking here and create binding. I created a binding so I could switch through these different items here. Oh, by the way, I found out if you have a native instruments and you got the buttons on it, it's using, this is the Mark II, has the buttons, they make a MIDI buttons. I was surprised to see the switch was the controller I needed if I wanted to use play stop without having to hit the button twice. As I made it the legal way, I created a binding. I hit the controller and I sent it to next play range. Create it in the Racks template. So there it is. And then I got a button to start the player. Great.
The loop is off now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep, loop's off now. And then I go to the next one and I have it loop up, down. Just so I can do that. So it's kind of cool because you can have certain types of things go on that you initiate with a button press or a pedal and that play the media player. And of course, the only way you're going to see what's happening is to look at the media player's MIDI out, MIDI monitor. And then you get to watch it in action because it does draw out the MIDI information on this timeline down here. But it does show you up here. And that's how I set these boundaries. Was watching it after I did the recording. And I could, of course, could go into a MIDI editor and edit out this extra space too. But it's kind of
So you're doing this in real time, Terry?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't totally real time. I did record the mod wheel as a recording first.
I see. Okay.
Yep. And I created a new item called Nothing Selected that turned everything off, so I could just select one track of a single input.
Okay.
In order to make special media player tools. And that way I have access, if I used my MPK 249 instead, I'd have access to all of the controllers in this one. And could be sliding sliders around like a maniac, turning knobs with my mouth and everything, and record it. And then have that to play back anytime, at any position. I could change my positions by changing these ranges. And really be a wild man on stage. One thing that's kind of cool about this is also, I was just trying to show that what we've done is record some controller movements and changes into MIDI. But now when you play them back, that can control a light show. It can control your pyrotechnics. It can control volume changes, fade outs, all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, it's pretty powerful. But so that's the demo of that part, that stuff. So that's what I've come up with so far. I also wanted to show I have a Mac, a black key filter here, and I'm sending my rack MIDI into that. So it's getting a bunch of stuff. Let's see, let's send rack MIDI out to something. I gotta send to something. Yep, MIDI out. And so you see black key filter is very simple. You choose what channel. The input channel can be any, or it can be specific input channels. And you tell the white keys to go out on channel 3 and the black keys to go out with no change, just whatever they came in on. So this is one of the PIS MIDIs, and I'm going to show you where to get those now because the site has been down for ages, but there's a few places you can now download them. Anyway, the best way to look at this is just to look at the monitor. So we send to my main keyboard, Racks template MIDI in. Let's just go in here and look at the MIDI out. Wrong place. There we are. So there you have the white keys going out on 3, and the black keys going out on 1. White keys. Okay. Pretty neat, huh? So I always wanted to do a piece like that. Here you go. Right. Okay, so we got that to work. You saw it in MIDI. I didn't actually send it to anything unique. But so now you have those two outputs that you can send MIDI out and have things tuned into the different channels. Now this is one of the many PIS MIDI filters. And if you look at my plugins, you'll see I've got a million of them. So that was just one of the top ones, MIDI black key filter. All of these are part of the PIS MIDI ones, and it includes a few pretty tricky filters that we don't have in our filters set. So it makes it useful as kind of an addendum that if you're going to build a filter-based rack, then you have all these extra tools. And let me show you where you actually go get these. So there is a KVR thread just devoted to this thing, and it's 6 whole pages deep. This link here does not work. It gives you an error. He never renewed his certificates, updated the information, and so they suspended it on him. Basically the government, ICANN, they suspended his thing, this A+net, where he went and bought his domain. Merely because he didn't go in, and you have to annually go in and make sure your address information is correct. So, other people, you can search for PIS MIDI, all as one word, as 2 words, and you will find a few locations. You'll find the original over on Wayback Machine, so you can look for this site by searching for that link in Wayback Machine. That's web.archive.org, and it takes you to the original site, so you can read his descriptions of each and every one of the items. Google has also stashed it in the archives. Just get this out of the way so you can see that. So the Google Code Archive has this archived in it with the downloads. So there's the zip file for all of them, and you simply install them in your VST folder. There's a few that work with Juice, which is a GUI interface that's very popular, and so some just use that. It's just so you know. There's descriptions all about. And then a third location, if you did a search for it, you could find this guy's page, and you'll see that symbol, because that's what everybody sees when they try to go to the PIS.org now. But he went ahead and put the descriptions and stuff in his page and gave you the download links for just the base set. So these are a bunch of things that are very useful when you're doing this kind of playing around that we're doing here. Okay, so there you go. So for the rest of the program, I thought maybe we'd make some neat custom items.
I have a question about splitting the keyboard, and that is, often wish for it to sort of like easily be able to push it around. In other words, some things I could just have like the bottom, maybe 20 keys, and then sometimes I want it split where it's just the upper 20 keys, and I just need to figure out how I'm going to organize that. I just never done it.
Well, but that's
I've
why
had
I'm
some-
showing you this, is because this way you can make a rack that has named filters that you can just call up the split you want. And it's already made. The work is done. You don't have to
Right.
even think of going back in and making it again.
So
You
that
just
instant split, right?
instant split, yeah.
Yeah.
20, you can call one 20 lower notes, and it's
Right.
done.
Right.
And you just make a bunch of these custom splits. Yeah, Torsten.
Yeah, I did that with the state. So I have some splits. I always split on the C because then I don't have to remember where I made the split. So I just have 2, 5, 3, 4, 4, 3. So I know the number of octaves, lower and upper. And that works fine. For me, I just take this rack, put it in a song if I need it, and group the notes through that and get it split out on the upper and lower.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really simple. That was one of the inspirations from one of the other seminars.
Well, and plus you have your option whether you want to deal with this at the input level where you're sending stuff up at the top of Cantabile, or if you want to deal with it at the output level, because you can filter as an output too, where you just bring in rack MIDI in, filter it, and send it out this named output. Which may be a little more intuition friendly, because you're figuring, well, you filter it and then you send it out the door, rather than having the input like I just showed, where I'm doing it from the input side, and you start thinking, well, what? It's already filtered? Yeah, it gets filtered instantly. It gets filtered actually in the future and sent back to the present. That's how it works. Quantum theory. Well, it's not really a theory anymore. It's a fact. I just said it. Okay, well, so yeah, it's things like that, though, that make this so powerful. And one thing that this sort of looks like, in a sort of way, kinda, is it almost looks like states when you realize that you're talking about a whole list of possibilities. So you just select from the list. But what's even cooler about it is a single rack can be delivering up a whole bunch of options as one rack, and you simply calling up which options you want to use, and which those options be directed out to where you want them, so that you, unlike states which are mutually exclusive, you hit a state and now that's it. You're in that state. Whereas this lets you choose several of the options right from the output or the input and send that to a different synth or a different filter or effect, and do it all right from there. So rather than being mutually exclusive, it's inclusive, and you can have whole sets that's one kind of magic Pandora's box full of possibilities that you just access in order to make all these changes. So that's why I was thinking along the lines of these being like templates. And let me show you a little more about the templates thing. When you are inside your rack, and in order to save a rack, an embedded rack, you've got to click something in the rack. If you have something else clicked elsewhere, then the file changes. Now it's saving recording sets. I'm going to set here, and now I can save rack copy as. But I can also save as a rack template and give it a name. So that lets you, now when you want to create a new rack up here, oops, get out there, add object, embedded rack from file, you can go into your racks solo templates, and there it is, there's that template that you created, and it's got all that stuff in it, including all of the named ports. So none of those get forgotten because they're all part of the rack. Neat, huh? What's not remembered is this part, the assignments. So you can load those in though by copying and pasting out of a song. So if I do a copy and paste, and I think I have to click here to do that full copy. Let me get rid of this one, and I just paste, and now I get the assignments. So I can paste from one song to another, copy and paste from one song to another, and retain my assignments. Got it? Because if I just want to not, start fresh, then I simply open the template as my base. And the nice thing is then you're not erasing over, because it's in the template section and it takes extra effort to get to that folder. You're not writing over your templates if you didn't want to. How many times I've done that mess where I've written over a template in Performer. I made a couple changes and hit save all, and okay, now my master template just got changed. My master rack, I should say. Whereas if I would just save that master rack as a template and always load it in from the templates thing, it wouldn't be messing with me. I would be saving it. I would be saving a copy. All right, so what else are we going to do here? We got to do something else. All right, so what other objects we got? We can actually embed racks inside racks. Okay, now is that useful? You tell me. I don't know. I found a use for it with a reverbs rack that I made. So I had a rack that's got a few different reverbs in it. Now, mind you, we're mostly focusing on MIDI so far, and filters, which are MIDI filters. But you can also have effects racks in Solo that give you similar kinds of options that we were talking about, the state-like behavior, and not being mutually exclusive at that, where we can use a single rack to house, say, a couple of reverbs. So let's go ahead and do a demo of something like that. To give some clarity to what I'm talking about, my processing rack does similar, and it's already done, so let me just show that. Truthfully, I only use this in here because it makes it easy to quickly compare a bunch of different reverbs, switch between them. Once I've made some settings changes to one, I switch away from it. It retains its settings so that I can do an A/B kind of check just by selecting it. So let's do something that's along the same lines that would work in Solo. So let's go ahead and we'll create two objects. We'll create an embedded rack. And this can be a Solo processing rack, for instance. And this can have an audio, it has an audio input. So I'll just send it stereo out to the speakers or whatever, and just have it to listen to. Send it out there. And inside of that, just simply have the input ports be the rack stereo and be setting it to things. So I can have filters, I can have basic things, volume controls, I can have whatever I need in there. But let's add an embedded rack inside the embedded rack. And we'll make this be the reverbs rack. So change that. I'm just going to put 2 reverbs. I'll put a reverb in and delays. So this is where, again, the input ports, audio input ports this time, can come in handy because I can make one stereo input port be called MH Halo Verb, and one input port be called Replica XT for a delay line. So now I've got those input ports, and as to say, I should point out, let me go back to those audio ports. They are just the name and the alias. There's nothing else to them. These, like all input and output ports, they're just names for ports. Okay? Simply names. But now what you do with them is that you've got this access inside of here. You can add a root to the Halo verb, and you can add an object, be Halo verb. And send Halo verb to Halo verb. Ta-da! Same idea, replica XT, and just add an object, plugin, and there's replica. And so I send to replica. Ta-da! So now we've got this thing that I can send my rack stereo in and send the one out to MH. And let's make a copy. Send that one to replica. Okay. Now this is not as useful because I've named them here without naming them here. I would like, well, perhaps it's as useful because all I'm doing is sending my audio in here, and then from the input ports I can send stuff. And it created a MIDI in. There we go. I can from the imports I can then send what's coming in. So, but you starting to get the idea that I've created this one that's got some audio ports that are just input ports, and internally that's how I'm dissecting what goes to what. Now it would be even cooler if I had various inputs here. So let's add a couple input ports to this end. To the main rack, input port with Halo verb, for instance, and another one called with replica.
You created the MIDI ports.
Oh, I made the MIDI ports? Well, I'm glad you're here. What a maroon. Sure did. Well, those will be useful too, right? So I can remote control. I did that on purpose. Yeah. Yeah.
You would need that if you're going to assign a knob to change the...
That's right. You need a knob to change things. Absolutely. All right. So anyways, there we go. I'm telling you. Sometimes I wonder. So now it should behave. And I changed my rack stereo in to be with Halo verb for that and with replica for that. So now right at the outset, I've got this thing that I can send stuff to my rack, and it depends, it says what's going to go where. This reverb rack is, lo and behold, savable as a copy itself, so I can load it into future racks that I make that might have different assignments. And now I can send audio out from, let's see what I got, making noise. I got Podolsky making noise. So I can send it to a different processing rack. I can send it to this new one, Solo processing rack with Replica XD. And I got to get an output. There it is. So, or I can go from Podolsky and instead go just to the reverb. You certainly got the idea by now. Solo with MH. And I can go to both, too. I can go to both. Because it's not mutually exclusive, I just had to take another audio output out and send that one to Halo Verb. Right? Because it's not mutually exclusive. So that counts as a real plus in my book. Okay, so you're getting a lot of selectivity and power just by building these racks up. And again, they're savable. Once you go inside and have something selected inside, you can save them. Ta-da! And it saves right along with the whole thing. Great. Okay, so what else was I going to fool around with?
Terry, I was wondering, can you activate or deactivate routes using conditions so that, let's say, the signal goes to the allo verb only when program 2 is active, and like we saw in the previous webinar, not that there are conditions in the routing depending on program change or controllers, so that you can have something like states. No? The signal goes to the replica if controller, just for switching between different reverbs, for example. Let's see.
Right. Well, we might be able to enable and disable parts of the rack.
What I was not considering is that those are audio ports, so you don't have these conditions, I guess.
Yeah, but we can control those using switches and things.
This you can do. Okay.
Notes. We can turn them on and off. You see, I can go inside of here and I can turn this on. I can turn that off in a certain condition. Turn that on in another condition. So I have control. It just whether we have the access to program numbers to do that. So let's go ahead and see. That would be an input ports thing. So this would be sending the program change, and we'll just use any for now. Send it to the plugin.
I guess
the rack.
The port must have a name to be controlled. You have to give a name to the port.
Yes, the checkbox. Yes.
For the yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and create binding with MH Halo Verb. Just to keep my naming conventions consistent. And
here you don't need to change anything.
Pretty much any button.
Oh, you don't. Okay.
Oh, you're right. I don't even need.
You don't need to set it here.
Right, because I can change it in there. So just hit cancel.
This already has a name.
Oh, it's the output. Missing target.
It's the bottom one.
There it is. Enabled or disabled. Or I can toggle. Okay, so enabled. Yeah, and it has gain. So I can toggle using a program change. And right now it's any, and I think I can send a program change.
Well, the right thing would be the input MIDI part of the solo processing rack, because that way it is the MIDI input of the rack. So it does not depend on what you have outside.
That's right.
And then you have to connect the MIDI input to some controller outside.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and MPK 249, just say keys, send it to this new thing, solo processing rack. I believe that's right. And sure enough, it's getting something. It's computing. I see it flash. Actually, let's just take a look at the routing. Ah, it is working. It just wasn't flashing green. I expected that to flash green. But when you see the cursor turns to a circle, I knew something had to be happening. And so on program 1, nothing. Program 2, yes. Program 3, nothing. Program 2 again. All right, so we just did it using program numbers in a generalized format. Also, you have on any, so that if any program change occurs, it would change the status and make it toggle. Or we could select on or off too.
I think that's more reliable to select or on off, so it does not depend on the initial state.
Exactly.
Okay, so in this way, one can set up a list of bindings and activate different reverbs for different program changes. So to get something like states in this situation.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
So it's the same thing. We send it to. Oh, we got to name the root.
Like in solo, this would be the only way, right? To pull up.
I think so.
Reverb.
Yeah, exactly. I think so.
Let's get out of there. Go here, and this time with replica.
But you never know with Cantabile. There are always a few ways to do things, but in any case, this is the only one that I have figured out.
Right.
So now I have a 3 being the trigger. Well, I don't have it turned off. That's why. I'm not seeing a change because then I have to have these turned off. So I have to have a methodology of turning them off too. So there's 2 and there's 3. So
See, I guess for each binding you have to switch on one of the roots and off all of the others. So you have to copy. For each root, you need as many program changes, as many bindings as there are roots, so that you can switch the root that you want on and all the others off. In that way, it is reliable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't know what happens.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of bindings, but I think.
But once you do it once.
Yeah,
you know?
and then forget about it.
Right.
Yeah. You can use groups for that. So you have a group to activate a reverb, another group activates another reverb, and so on. So it's more readable.
Yes, exactly. And so on off. And so when 2 comes on, here we go. So let's see if it worked what I just did. There's 1, 2, 3. Great. So we just got very state-like behavior out of that. It's pretty neat, just based on the program change being sent. Then that means that edge thing where you push one button to cycle through the different program changes could be really handy in making all of these toggle.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Also, we could extend it to going inside of here as well and suspend if we wanted to save CPU. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you deactivate the whole rack, is the VST deactivated too, or just the
Oh,
rack?
good question. Looks like they're still there, but whether they're doing a CPU hit or not, let's see.
So maybe you have to deactivate the VST directly, I
Probably.
guess. In my opinion, the best way to do it is to pass the MIDI input to the reverb rack and let the reverb rack decide which VST to activate or deactivate with its bindings. Here in the add root,
Got
the
it.
MIDI in must goes to the MIDI out. Sorry, okay, MIDI in must go to the reverb rack MIDI in.
Reverbs and delays. There it is at the bottom.
Okay.
So now we have a MIDI in.
Okay, so now if you open the other rack and go into the bindings of that rack.
Now I should be able to see. Have an effect
Okay,
on
here.
things.
Okay, so now you should be able to bind the program change of to the running suspend of the VST.
I think that's this one.
This is the controller. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, controller. In principle, must be the same command which changes the routing in the upper level. So if you use program change for that, you have to use the same program change here also.
Well, here I would do it to replica 1. Yes, it would have to be the same. So I could do it by program change. Program change. I think we had 3 be replica. And we'll just toggle it for now. So let's see what happens. Here we go. So that's the one we wanted.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So again, we could
It's
put
a bit
in,
of work.
but done once.
Yeah. Okay.
Done once, and we did toggle. So in the next program change 3, it should turn on. Yeah. So that's the way that one. But we agreed that it's probably better to do it direct, discrete. One mode turns it on, and another mode
And all the
turns
others
it off.
turns off. Yeah.
So we just would have to be discrete and say when two
Yeah.
hits, it turns off. Yeah, and maybe put in a list.
Yeah.
And again, this can be saved like a template. Anyway, okay. Well, this is a pretty promising set of options. And we hardly even touched filters. We looked at a few filters, simple filters. But the big trick here today was using these named MIDI ports, named audio ports, in order to pull off a lot of control. And this is right from the input stuff, so we have a lot of control right at the input list. And the nice thing about that is you can get all this stuff going on up there and then hide it. And it all saves with the song. So that's pretty cool. You could probably create a rack, an embedded rack that handles all this stuff and saves all these input routes with the rack. And then embed this stuff inside that. You know, put the racks template inside of the routing template. And have all these different ways of routing, perhaps. But I'm excited that we found a way to make the program things work, especially since we have that one route that we've created with the pad notes using these latch controllers. And that we made notes work with that. So we could just as easily make program changes, output in any order we want, just by hitting a note repeatedly, and have different notes assigned to different sets of racks. Whoa. Okay, well, as everybody's brain starting to melt yet?
I melted about 2 years ago.
Oh yeah. Well, I poured mine into a little pretty mold and made a decoration out of it. I have on my mantle. Yeah. So really should have it gold plated or something.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody got any more musings and ideas coming up on 2 o'clock already?
What are you doing on Wednesday, Terry?
Oh, probably eating spaghetti.
Spaghetti days Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday's Prince Spaghetti Day, according to the old American advertisements.
You have to come here to eat real spaghetti. You have to come here.
That's right. Well,
Pretty amusing.
not to change the subject, but any last questions? Any last wishes before we depart from this topic of solo? Nope. Okay.
No, but it's amazing that some of those things that you would think you need states for, you can.
You can
You
pull
know,
it
there
off.
is a way.
Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. So,
Again, that's the beauty of Cantabile. I mean, it's you can do it so many different ways.
you know it. It's deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you all
All right.
on Wednesday.
Yep. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.